Nope, there we go.
Okay, we're ready to start. If everyone could stop talking.
Eric, you leading the charge?
Yes, sir.
Go for it.
All right. First, I would like to say, Judge, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. I wasn't even there. So,
I don't know, you look guilty to me.
I'm just saying. Just. I would like to thank this panel, this august panel, and the mayor for giving us the opportunity to participate. Our group was called Catalyzing Jobs, which, just broadly speaking, kind of covered the economic development spectrum. I would also like to acknowledge all of the presentations that have gone before, because in my personal experience, economic development encompasses everything. All the stuff you've heard already, and some of the things you're gonna hear in the future: education, public safety, public health, sustainability, and housing, incorporation of the entire community. And so our report, and I would also like to acknowledge the members that are here joining us of our panel. We had about 20 folks on our panel. They were tremendous throughout my roughly 20 years of public service. I have had the curse or the blessing to have been a part of a number of these groups, and I can say without hesitation or reservation that this was probably the best working group that I've ever been a part of, and was seriously honored for all of you. There were no wallflowers, there were no doormats. Everybody really kicked in. My co-chair, Cindy Kahn, I would like to give my own little round of applause to. She was terrific. I haven't had the opportunity to work with her before. This was good. So much for the platitudes. Let's get really quickly into the report that we have. I would encourage you to, if you do have questions, start writing them down now, because we're not going to take our whole 20 minutes or whatever it was for our report. We're going to try to keep it short to give more, A, question opportunity from the audience, but B, some more participation from our members, because they cover a very broad spectrum of the entire economy that our city has. We're going to talk about some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that we have as a city. The first thing we want to acknowledge is this is definitely not a gloom and doom situation. We are extremely fortunate to live in Santa Fe. As we say in the report, relatively speaking, we have a good financial situation. Yes, we have challenges. We have a lot of backlog that the mayor is dealing with in terms of infrastructure and such, but generally speaking, we're in pretty good shape. People love to live here. The quality of life is terrific. Our global brand recognition is off the charts. You know, everywhere I go, some of you may know that I run the Santa Fe Film Commission now, which is a joint county and city operation. Even more so than New Mexico itself. People know Santa Fe, and that's just a fact. Everywhere I go, from New York to LA, overseas, everybody knows. The only thing they know about New Mexico is Breaking Bad, right? Everybody says, "Oh, Breaking Bad, New Mexico, Breaking Bad." You know, but you say Santa Fe, and then they say Billy the Kid. And I'm like, no, that's not quite true. But at least you know, at least you know Santa Fe. Everybody knows Santa Fe. But even the Garden of Eden had snakes, right? So we have some things that we need to discuss. And what our report covers breaks down broadly into three main categories. One is internal operations of the city. You know, this is a challenge with bureaucracies going back to the Phoenicians. Ever since we had clay tablets, people complaining about the government. How do we make the city function as efficiently and as best as possible to achieve its function? So that's one of the things that we talk about. That's an internal focus of the report. The other is an external one, which is how do we position ourselves, particularly when we're trying to diversify, broaden our economy, recruit businesses here, convince existing businesses to understand, to expand, that Santa Fe is a sophisticated partner with you. That's a big thing. You know, when you're dealing with recruiting businesses, when you're talking about getting businesses to expand, to commit to significant capital investment, they need to have confidence that they've got a partner that they're working with, and that's a huge thing, even more than I have found just in my experience, even more than tax rates, even more than incentives. They want to know that they're dealing with somebody who A, understands their business, and B, can deliver on the things that they're promising to do. And then the third is, and this is kind of a big one, because what we found was, one of the great things about Santa Fe, obviously, is the nominal unemployment rate is pretty low as well. So it's not just about creating jobs per se, it's about creating the right kind of jobs. And then how do we fill the pipeline, particularly with our young folks coming up, because that's one of the main challenges we face. From a demographic perspective, the mayor is fond of saying, normally a demographic chart, a graphic chart, kind of looks like a pyramid where there are a few old people and then it expands down to a lot of young people. In Santa Fe, we look more like an hourglass. And somebody may have said this already today, I don't know, in one of the previous groups, where we have a lot of folks, older retired folks, a lot of younger folks. It's the folks in the middle, which also tend to be the highest generating, income generating, most productive. 25 to 50, is that what it is? 25 to 50. That's kind of where 22 to 44. Okay, that's kind of where the constriction is in our demographic profile. So how do we create the right kind of job? And so the first thing, professional operation of the city. Second thing, externally project ourselves as a sophisticated resources partner. Third thing, what do we do to develop our workforce to match the kind of jobs that we're trying to face in the economy going forward? Another thing we found, again, I mentioned these were 20 people from across the entire economic spectrum of the city, everything from healthcare to housing to media, myself, to building trades, everything, service industry, local business, folks representing financial services, such as Mr. Bingman here. And these are folks that had not, to my knowledge, ever been involved in an exercise like this. And if you look at this document, this can either be considered as somewhat, I don't want to say depressing, but somewhat anxiety-inducing, or an opportunity, is that a lot of the stuff that we came up with independently, that this group came up with independently, reflects economic development plans that the city has done going back at least 10 years. If you go back, the last economic development, and we didn't look at these, by the way. This was totally just starting from scratch, blind stuff. A lot of the things mirror the recommendations that were put in place. I think on the city's website, the last economic development report they have posted up was dated 2008, and if you read through that, you'll see a lot of very similar things that we came up with. Again, from streamlining regulatory regimes, making things consistent across operating groups within the city, procurement, local preference for procurement. I mean, that sounds like kind of a simple thing. And a lot of these things are kind of simple, but, as I said to the group in the last meeting, everybody wants to play guitar like Jimmy Page, but nobody wants to practice scales. Right, and so a lot of it's getting back to really fundamental basics, were some of the things that we had in our group. The workforce training, exactly. The broadband, exactly. There's a lot of stuff that you're going to hear from a number of different groups. The broadband stuff, obviously, Matt Brown and his team, they're doing a tremendous job of trying to get that cranked out. So a number of these things are also obviously already being addressed by the city. So. That's kind of the overall, you can read through the specific recommendations. We had an appendix that we also attached that, we were kind of cheating because our group, everybody wanted to have all kinds of input. And there was about a 4-page appendix that we had attached. And Danila, who we refer to as Tenacious D because she just keeps cracking the whip on us, wouldn't allow us to attach it in your report. But there are details that we have. But getting back to what I was saying about us mirroring a lot of the recommendations in these prior reports, those are very detailed. Those are 50, 60, 70-page reports where people put a lot of good thought into it. There's a lot of consultants speaking there and stuff, but if you really hash through it, there are some really good ideas to go through. That's kind of the overview, really, of what our report was. Again, breaks down into 3 areas: the efficient operation of the city from a business perspective. Again, this is about catalyzing jobs and catalyzing the right kind of jobs, making it as easy as possible getting the government not to be an impediment but a partner. Kind of get out of the way to the degree that you can. Obviously, you need some regulatory regimes. There are some community values that will be embedded in any kind of system like that. But to the degree that we're talking about routine things, business licensing, building permits, reviewing codes, reviewing the building code that may have been outdated, may be outdated. And again, these are things that are common to any government enterprise that I've ever been involved in. They're pretty simple. And then building a reputation, this is a big deal, particularly in the business recruitment world. It's just like film. It's not what you know, it's who you know, and it's a super word of mouth business. And the better reputation that we get, success breeds success, in other words, in this regard. And then making sure, particularly for our young people, that the right kinds of opportunities are being presented. Other groups, the housing thing is a big deal. I mean, we hear this a lot, but that wasn't our group. So we referenced it, but we left it to the housing group, to talk about. The broadband, that stuff, that's all important. 5 minutes, we're already up to 5 minutes. Holy smokes, I'm talking way too much. I'm going to shut up. Cindy, you got anything?
I think that a couple of the exciting opportunities that we talked about and discovered and are built out in this report are, one is this idea of building a concierge service for the city, which would be both for City Hall, so people can come to City Hall, know where to go, know who to see, and really be guided through any sort of process, whether it's permitting, procurement, but also having another layer of concierge where when we do attract businesses like the Descartes Labs of the world or Meow Wolf or whoever it is, that they actually have somebody at the city that's their point person to help things speed along the way, so that when we attract great businesses here, they don't succeed despite the government. They succeed in partnership with the government. So I think that was one of the really innovative, exciting, and really easily implementable ideas that we had. The other is really leveraging all of the incredible assets we have in private sector to become mentors, to build SCORE and develop it even bigger and more impactfully for our city, and have an entire army of volunteers and mentors that can build that younger workforce and that can really partner with these younger companies or young entrepreneurs and leverage all this expertise that we have that right now is really not being leveraged to the extent that it could be. So I think just really tapping into the resources we already have, both to speed things along, to make processes easier, and also to provide a deeper level of mentorship for different types of sectors.
So before we wrap up our presentation, open it up for questions. Do any of our panel members, do you have anything you guys want to add in our main presentation?
I'm David Karshmer, everyone. When I look at city function, I think the thing that strikes me is that our city is largely a service economy. And when I say our city, I mean all the businesses in Santa Fe, if not all, a large part of what we do as a community is service. And I think there's the old adage of the cobbler's children go barefoot. And I have a feeling that in terms of serving ourselves, we just haven't been very good at it. We haven't focused the skill set we have embedded in a service-oriented economy, whether it's the best in the world or not. We have skills to bring to bear on making our service economy, our community, our government service economy even better. And I think when we talk about a concierge approach, I think that's definitely consistent with the sort of thinking we'd like to bring, is how do we let Santa Fe become, its own best mentor for how it can behave as a service. On the issue of the economy and how we build the economy here, there's a lot of talk about diversification, and I've been very involved in diversified elements of our economy. But that said, that's always, exciting. It's very sort of a bright star in terms of any city's growth, but we still have a large part of our economy that is in, as I said, the service economy. It's taking care of tourists. It's taking care of, people inside our economy, providing secondary services. And what I think about is we can't leave those businesses behind. How do we make, as we want to build a strong economy, we can't depend only on diversifying, but we have to take the economy that we have already. And I'm not sure that it's a concierge service, but it's a focus on affording rather than regulating new opportunities inside our businesses. We have lots of businesses. As part of what I did this last couple of months, I went out and started looking for jobs just so I could understand what it was like for someone in the economy. And eventually spoke to people who are doing recruiting in the environment. And their comments were that there are lots of 3 to 6 person businesses who are struggling, who need help, who very often don't know how to get the help. And I think if we can build strength in the businesses that we've got on the ground already, in addition to supporting new business entries and diversification, I think we build holistically a stronger Santa Fe. And I'm certainly encouraging the mayor and his team to look at how we support, hello, Mr. Mayor, how we support existing businesses and how we, rather than offering them a patchwork of potential support through SCORE and a lot of other groups, but really focus the opportunities to support smaller businesses to both become stronger hiring opportunities, but also become a more stable part of our overall economy. So,
I'll add one quick thing. My name is Jennifer Navarez. I work with New Mexico Tech Works and a nonprofit called Community Learning Network. I could speak a lot. I won't. But I will say something I usually don't add, which is it came to our attention. There are a lot of professionals in our community who do not work here. And sometimes it's because of state and government regulations that make it difficult to transfer licenses or get started. And one of the things, particularly in the law field, to transfer your law license here is dramatically challenging and incredibly expensive. So working on simplifying and making it easier for the amazingly gifted and talented folks that are coming here or living here to actually work here was a big topic in our group. The second quick thing I will add, which I usually talk to, is that a lot of people don't know that emerging media, technology, social media, digital marketing are really great enterprises, growing fields, and in many cases, great businesses that don't require the same kind of overhead you need if you're doing a brick and mortar store. And those are areas of tremendous growth. They need support. Many of our community members are not online. They are not marketing. They are not doing Instagram yet. They're not running YouTube channels and all of those other ways of communicating. And doing some effort in supporting them and getting online and getting the word out was another topic. And last but not least, our youth statewide, less than 5% statewide are taking computer science class. In Santa Fe, it's 1.41% in public school. So we can do a little bit of effort will go a long way in that arena. And we talked about that too. And I know our school board and some of the school district are already thinking about how that's going to look and what we can do.
Thanks, Jennifer. Both those comments being exemplary of the fact that this group covered a lot of topics that were covered in more depth by other working groups. With that, should we open it up to questions?
Okay, remember, write your questions down on your cards, and Matt and Danila will pick them up. And now the mayor has comments and questions.
Thank you. You're right. This is a very diverse group of people with backgrounds that touch on so many different parts of our economy. And the notion of both getting the city's house in order so we're easier to work with and becoming user-friendly. And then, as David's point about growing what's already here from the grassroots up. We are an economy of small and medium-sized businesses for the most part. Investing in those, making sure our local community gets recognized, and then becoming more attractive to outside potential investors is spot on. David, I want to throw a question your way. I was struck in this at the Conference of Mayors again at how many cities have managed to, around the country, have managed to put together their own innovation centers or innovation teams, sometimes inside a city government where there is an Office of Innovation. The mayor of Austin has done a remarkable job of doing that. sometimes as a public-private partnership, where you could imagine some of your recommendations of the group being turned over to a public-private partnership that is a center for innovative thinking and innovative problem solving. And I wondered if you've run across that in your own work life or in your experience with IDEO and other institutions, whether there is a way to combine the existing city resources in economic development, housing, transportation, but then create a new component that combines public-private innovative thinking.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. There are lots of great examples that are in play right now. Certainly, Gainesville, is the Gainesville movement is, I believe you're aware of, is doing a lot of partnerships outside of government. I think what there are two things at play that facilitate that sort of behavior. One is to, in some ways, erase some of the dividing lines between public and private partnerships. Not that the public sector takes money, but there are more affordances for those sort of relationships. And I think the other thing is seeing government move from a position of regulation to a position of affording behaviors, affording opportunities inside the city. And I think those things can happen. You know, lots of cities have done it. San Francisco has been active in sort of partnering with with private partners, both in their Mission Bay activities of developing that part of the city, which is becoming what was once a sort of poverty-stricken area, has become a very rich area for both the University of California, San Francisco, and also for the city as a whole. There's a migration of the city down into that part of San Francisco. So I think it's very possible. I think it depends on there being a bit of a change in the way we think about those sort of partnerships. And I'm not offering myself for a job, but I think someone who's naive would ask the right questions about that sort of thing. And I'm certainly naive about government. So not that I'm not empathetic, but I think some naive questions have to be asked about how we do those sort of things.
Okay. Immigrants make up 15% of Santa Fe. The majority are between 18 and 49 years of age. Can you speak to how these proposals and the city can capitalize on this young and industrious workforce?
You want me to field that? We specifically talked about the immigrant community very much and focused on that as an opportunity that, along with the other assets that we underutilize in the city, that we really need to focus on, and that's a tremendous opportunity for both economic and social expansion in the community. A lot of these issues in my work, and we have Marcela Diaz here who does a lot of work with Somos Un Pueblo Unido, who I've worked with now for close to 20 years on issues like this. Issues that face the immigrant community, yeah, there are certain idiosyncratic issues, but there are a lot of issues that are exactly the same for everybody. It's ease of use. How do you start a business? How do you run a business? How do you recruit employees? What's the educational situation like? What's public health like? What's public safety like? It's of a piece. And so I think what our overarching approach was just to be inclusive of everybody in this community. And by the way, as you point out, Madam Chair, this represents the exact demographic that we're trying to attract and retain, into the city.
Did the group think about strengthening the healthcare economy, especially home care, which will be growing due to our continuing aging population? There are great pipeline programs at Capitol High School and the Santa Fe Community College. How can we build upon this to support job creation for local youth?
Yeah, our team actually absolutely looked at that. We had representatives from both Presbyterian and Christus St. Vincent in our team, and so we looked at opportunities at Santa Fe High, at the community college. So much of what we are recommending, whether it's from the immigrant population to different sectors, is looking at partners in the community that are doing this type of work, and how do you build those private sector leadership in order to strengthen the pipeline and really determine what type of skills training are needed, who's doing them, and also do an assessment in the community, what's not being trained, what's not happening, and then filling the gaps there, but really having a good understanding and a network of what is accessible in our community and how to make these opportunities more accessible to people like the immigrant population or youth that need vocational other sorts of training programs.
I had a question for John Bingaman for a sec. We talk a lot about expanding the entrepreneurial startup community in Santa Fe. The components of that, including venture capital and financing, but also talent and managerial capability. I know you've looked, this is an area where you've got personal expertise. What if the city government wanted to champion and promote Santa Fe as the next cool place to start a business or grow a business? From your experience and from what the working group looked at, what are some of the things that you think would make a difference? Is it just ease of doing business, or is it more marketing promotion? Is it talent development? Is it getting the venture capital community to work collaboratively to just showcase how much available money and oversight supervision there is? I think we have the ability to have our own Sand Hill Road in Santa Fe if we wanted it, but we haven't quite put the pieces together yet.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think we talked about a lot of issues that sort of underlay your question, and I think our conclusion was that, it's a multifaceted approach that has to address a whole series of issues. People have a trailing spouse issue that needs to be addressed, which goes to, jobs. There's housing has been touched on. The business concierge concept, I think, would help a lot. And then just creating connections for new people as they kind of come into the community. So it's really not a silver bullet, but just sort of all the work that we're doing, I think, over the next year or two could establish a foundation where we could go out and make that pitch, very credibly.
Okay. What are some ideas or recommendations to support young professionals, those entering the workforce in Santa Fe? This is not me asking this question. I mean, I'm asking you this question, but I didn't write it. I found I am competing for jobs with older, experienced, semi-retired folks who are new or more recent residents.
5 minutes. All right, Cindy. Jennifer, you get that. Go for it.
I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that. It's a tricky one. We have a lot. I have to say, we may have a lot of may have a employment lower than we think, but we have underemployment higher than we think. And so there are a lot of people in our community that are working part-time and they want to be working full-time. They're working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. They're working jobs under their level of expertise. And I'm going to pull the numbers out of my head. It's probably wrong, but this past year, Lanel Foundation up in Espanola put out a job opening for a receptionist assistant. I can't remember the actual hundreds of applicants they got. And sitting over lunch, she said, so many people applied for this job that were overqualified. And granted, that's a great thing, but we're not utilizing our assets wisely. So I don't know the answer to that in the immediate, but I do think encouraging people to start small businesses, to do consulting. We have an incredibly talented design community and artistic and innovation and science and technology that is world renowned. The highest number of scientists in our region, the highest number of artists. It's incredible. And so I think small business development, consulting, and services solve some of that, because when you do what you love and you can do it well and make a living, you're happy. And you don't take those jobs away from someone else. But I do think earlier today in the other groups, they mentioned interning, apprenticeships, mentoring. we call it AIM, the new AIM, AIM, apprenticeships, internships, and mentorships are powerful. And I did want to recognize like Flow Science, OpenEye Software, Meow Wolf. Many of our companies are starting to take on apprentices, interns, internships. Particularly this summer, are flourishing. Santa Fe Community Foundation has put out interns all over the city this summer. Those connect young people in a one-on-one way where they have the personal connection. And so it doesn't matter what your resume says. You've been there and you're working there. So that's a tricky one to answer quickly. I think it's a long-term challenge. Thanks, Ed.
As you can tell, Jennifer was one of our more enthusiastic participants. I think we have 1 minute left. Is there time for
One more question. Santa Fe is behind other cities in terms of providing high-speed internet infrastructure. How are we going to compete nationally without bringing the city up to speed?
Super good question, Judge, and I think it's a priority at the city. I will defer to the mayor to answer on that particular question, but I do talk a lot with Matt Brown, who I believe is overseeing that the implementation of that project, and hopefully we'll get that up to speed ASAP. In my particular business, it's critical. It's probably the biggest choke point, technical choke point that we have for film right now. But I know it affects everybody and every single group that we talk about: education, business, health, the whole deal.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You have anything you want to say, Mayor?
I think there's lots to work on here. Some of it immediate that as mayor I can grab onto and bring into City Hall right away. Establishing a culture of service at City Hall is something we're already working on, and we talk about at every senior staff meeting, and we take it as one of my key priorities. We need to be a user-friendly city. Your observations about the difference between unemployment and underemployment, I think, are really, really critical. And building out not just the middle of the demographic profile, but also the middle of the economic profile, so that there are good paying jobs that tap into people's professional skills or professionalizing skills will really grow the economy, but it'll also work across all these other categories of housing, education. All of the pieces do fit together. And I hope you guys will continue to give this thought. We're going to tap you for more ideas, and we will read your illegal addendum that Danila ruled out of bounds. We'll take that off budget and read it when opportunity provides. But thank you for your work. It's really remarkable. I appreciate it enormously.